Everybody, welcome back. Sorry we skipped last week. Just a lot of conference prep work. So we're back this week for another installment of our content layer series. And today we're going to be focusing, I think, on introducing parallelism into our builds via Node.js worker threads. Um, so yeah, maybe we can do a quick recap of like where we left off last.
Well,
Faith.
last
So
time we updated the to-do file.
nice, nice, nice.
What's it? So, yeah. And we did some work on the plugin API and build errors.
That's right. We refactored the way we make plugins and
Yes.
then made our errors prettier.
Update dependencies.
So are we going to use the snapshot builds of your, because so for context for folks, Tim has been working on like a massive refactor of the RPC package for Effect, which is really cool. You can maybe talk a little bit about that, Tim. But we're trying to decide whether or not we use the new like snapshot builds from our PR or from Tim's PR, or we just use the old like our. And the reason it's pertinent is because workers are currently implemented in the platform package, but in the new RPC implementation, we can actually use RPC for workers. So maybe Tim can give a little more context.
Yeah, so platform just kind of like abstracts workers for the different platforms. So in browsers, you have web workers, node worker threads. In a bun, they have their own worker thing. But then the layer on top of that provides like a nicer API for working with workers. At the moment, there's like a serialized worker abstraction in platform, but the new RPC libraries will replace that. And maybe this is a good way of actually making sure workers and RPC are nice.
Yeah, a little like dog
Then,
fooding of what
yeah, a
you've
little
been
bit of
building.
tough. But generally, when parallelizing things, you first need to work out where you branch everything off into the workers. So, like, you'll have a host that sends stuff to the workers. You need to work out what that stuff is. And then you'll need to, like, collate the results back somewhere and merge them all back in. So, maybe if we identify that point first, because that
I
will
feel like
determine what the API surface will look like.
Yeah, I feel like a good candidate is definitely in the builder. Probably somewhere like after we've, because where do we do the most work? Probably the two places we do the most like IO intensive work would be like computed fields, like reading the file in.
CPU intensive work is what you want to target.
Sorry,
So that would be anything that involves the plugins. Because was it like the Shiki stuff that we do is quite CPU intensive.
mm-hmm,
Shiki 2 slash.
true.
So I think like the index building will happen in the host bridge, the host process, which is writing the index files. It's just simple IO bound work. But the expensive stuff is taking like the content and then processing it into the resulting fields. Uh, which is so we've got our events, we've got our edit events. So I guess it'll be here where it takes the raw fields. Or actually, we're applying the plugins before this point, aren't we? in the actual configuration.
We're applying it as it's a stream, like a stream manipulation, right? Like we
Yeah.
rework the stream basically. So yes, we are applying the plugins beforehand.
So
Well, I do think resolving computed fields would also be a good candidate for offloading to workers. So if we can do all of that in the worker thread, it'd be a good idea, because you could imagine computed fields are effectful, so they could be somewhat intensive depending on what's going on.
okay, so we look at our config. Contentlayer. So we want to distribute this over workers, but I don't think the plugin API you want to concern yourself there. So I guess we just need some way of partitioning these. And maybe the source like only processes the files that matches some kind of ID. Then we can use like some kind of sharding system to split the work.
Would having just like a pool of workers that we offload to not work well enough for that, or?
Well, the problem is here we have like a fully built source. But then we would have to inject somehow our worker pool in the middle here. Split the work. Yeah. So it kind of needs to happen at this point before it hits the plugins. But the thing is, the document builder only gets past the like fully built source stream. Okay, so I'll look here. Yeah, I mean, we could pass in some kind of partition ID to the source. And then they only process the things that match the current partition ID.
Are you saying like a an ID that matches like a particular document ID? Or
Yeah,
are you
so we
talking?
have an output ID here. Yeah, we could hash that and like do it over like a number of workers. Do something like that to work out what worker it should run on. And if the current worker matches this, then we process it, otherwise we skip it.
I get it.
Or the other way of doing it is we somehow like swap the source stream out for the workers, and the host does the file system resolution, but the workers then swap the stream out for like the stream of kind of like output that the host sends to it, which might be a better approach.
And how would that look from like an API perspective, do you think? Like, I think I like that suggestion better, but how would you envision that like here? Would the
So in the source.make constructor, we would check the context, and if there is like a replacement stream available, then we'll switch to it. Let's maybe pursue that and see how we.
let's pursue.
Let's pursue. So we have this make thing, which gets the goods
The
from the
goods.
initial source. Okay, so
So make is currently synchronous, right? So where would we have like a separate constructor, or how would this work?
we just want to update this constructor to like swap out the stream if like a replacement one is provided.
Okay.
So to do that, we'll need a tag. What should we call this? For now, we could just call it worker open stream. And it'll be a tag. And then here. The worker event stream, and I guess this would be a stream of events. Just any event really. Better. We just go any depth now. And yeah, we just have no errors for now. No, we'll ignore that. Why is ESLint keep breaking?
I gotta give you the LSG config that I'm working with. For ESLint. Not perfect, but I feel like I've really zoned it in over the last like 3 or 4 months. Are you using ESLint through the LSP, or are you using it from the ESLint like D package? Do you know?
I'm using ESLint D just because it seems to perform a lot better.
The LSP is pretty peppy, but you gotta try it for yourself. Let me know what you think. But I tried ESLint D and I ran into a lot of the same problems you were having here.
Yeah, it's working now. This project's still using ESLint 8. It just needs to be updated.
I told you I was. Dylan in the chat and just said biome for life. I can't. So the thing that annoys me about biome, and maybe I just don't know how to configure it, is that it's not. It's like prettier. You can't you can't do context aware spacing and like new lines that
Yeah,
I'm aware of.
I've never tried bios. I just don't like spending time sitting at tooling, so I just don't do it. So
Dylan,
we were editing, like,
if you can show me, Dylan, how it took our lin time from 7.5 minutes to 3 seconds. Yeah, I mean, lin time is not where we spend most of our time. It's like setting these tools up. But I would say if you could show me how to set a biome to do contextually aware spacing and new lines, then I would consider swapping to it.
where
But
did my work go? Did I not save when I quit?
nah, Tim,
Rookie.
nah.
Rookie mistake. Uh,
Rookie
we'll
mistake.
call this work history. Work event stream extends context tag. We got so many tag APIs. We need to consolidate them. And we decided this would be a stream of events. Well, actually, would it be? Yeah, that's fine. So here we have our event stream. So we just need to swap it out. Work stream. Make.service option.
I'm having a very intense debate with Dylan in the chat right now.
Debate about what?
About just formatting and linting in general.
Alright. So it's done. Use events, otherwise use the worker stream. And then here we can just do a stream diagram. Alright, so if we're on a worker and we provide the replacement stream, and use that. Otherwise, use the original stream.
Cool.
So the document builder. And I guess I need to work out how we're going to get the config into our workers. I've never actually used workers in a library before, so this is going to be fun.
Which config are we trying to get in there?
We'll need to get the built configuration in there. I guess we'll just pass inside in some kind of initialization message where the built module is. Because if we look at config builder, what does it do? Takes the ES build results and then does that does this thing. So I guess we just passed the path for a build. And then it just does this to like pull in the config in the worker. So it can then read and like all the plugins and things. Anyway, well, first we need to get the workers actually working.
The worker is actually working.
We need to get them booted. And to do that, we'll need effect platform. What have we got on here? How do we not have an effect platform in the dependencies already? We're not using it everywhere.
Doesn't seem right. Is it in the root package JSON or maybe?
Yeah, it must be. I think we need to add them here too. So if we're going to use the new RPC, effect RPC, yeah, that's the only thing we need.
Is this the new RPC or is this the old one?
We'll just need to override it to get the new one.
Gotcha.
Let's quickly open the PR. PC. Here it is. Does this have any patches to main effect too? Oh, yeah, it did have some bug fixes in channel. Right. Yeah, build, sorry. Get the help. We override it. And then we'll want platform. And we want RPC. Just check if it works still. X packages.
That's good. Pretty sure we left an error in there on purpose.
Yeah, I think so. Right, so we need to get the work started. Just call it content worker.
Maybe that should be the new name of the package. Content worker.
Uh, platform node. Node worker, rather. And then platform. We're just trying to get like a basic worker started. Long number. I guess we should be using namespace imports. What does that return? It returns a scoped effect. And then if we import the runtime, we should be missing some dependencies here. So we need the platform. Provide node workaround layer. Okay, so we have a really basic worker. So we just need to boot it from the CLI. Somewhere. I guess in the docket builder. And remember to get it working with TSX, it's a little bit tricky. Full node. Okay.
Jeez.
So in development merge, we need to do this to get it working with TSX.
All right.
But then when we do the production build, I guess we need to turn it off. So make a pull. we make, I guess we can just use the service for our pool here. Content worker pool. And this is Contentlayer core. Document builder. It'll be a scoped effect and worker dot make pool. We just need to pass the size. So I guess here we're just passing the CPU count. Or we could do auto scaling. Bin size. One. Max size. The number of CPUs we've got. And then we need a time to live. Pause. That is how long it checks to scale down the pool with it. So maybe 10 seconds. Or 30. And it takes input output error. Number void. Dependencies. Node worker. Layout. Now what does that look like? We look at the default layer. Correct.
Nice.
And here we access the worker pool. And then maybe if we just spice a new message, so worker dot execute effect 1, 2, 3. So now our run effect should have a dependency on the worker pool. I'm guessing that's currently provided in the CLR.
Probably makes the most sense because that's probably also where we would disable it if need be. Like if a user wants to
Yeah.
just say what.
So CLI here. But currently it's a fixed requirement, not an optional one.
For testing, I think that's fine. We can make it optional later.
Yeah, I can just try that. So we're looking for it to function exactly the same, but it also lock in the worker. Package subclass knows how it serves it. Uh, right. I think that's a side effect of using the DR builds.
What that
Careful, no shade.
I wonder if we moved the resolutions into the core package, if that would fix this.
Multiplied by exports. This platform. Another any platform then. On the shade. Nope. Yeah, that's not the build one. I'm just trying making the modules and see what happens.
I like it. My favorite piece of advice that I would give to people when I was working in DevOps primarily. My first troubleshooting step. Did you restart it?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
9 out of 10 times that was the fix. Anybody who wants to become a DevOps professional, did you restart it? Should be your primary first question.
It's generally all fields of IT. Hey, there we go.
Did you restart it? Nice.
So our worker is booting and it's getting a message. Great. I guess this is where we start building up or start doing the RPC, but so we need to
What do we actually need to send across the wire? Like to the worker. Just the
we
path?
need to send the current config path that we're using.
And probably the
And then we need to I think we can send the config path along with the document IDs, and then we can like partition the
because
then
is
we can
every work
minimize the config.
okay.
So we need just a message that says to notify this worker that we want to process these things. So the payload would have documents. IDs, but document IDs are scoped to a document name, right? Oops. Document IDs are strings. So we open up our document builder. Yep, so IDs are scoped to name. And then we'll also need the current config.
But can we send the config over the wire? Because doesn't the config have like all the computed
Yeah, we can only
fields?
send the path.
Yeah, because the config itself is gonna have to be loaded on every worker, right?
Yeah. Config path. So one side of the worker will be sending process messages, and then on another side, we will need to be like receiving a stream of results for a given config path. Oops, it needs to be in the payload.
So Tim, explain a little bit about the new RPC and like what you're building up here.
So with RPC, you need to build up a schema of all your methods first. And each schema is represented by an RPC object. And in here, you can do your payload success, any errors, and you can also specify whether it's a stream or not. The process will just be like a simple notification message to tell the worker that, hey, we want to process these things. And then the results from that will get sent back down. This will be a stream. And we just need to set the success to whatever the result will look like. Yeah, once you've got your RPC schema, then you can start implementing the server and also deriving a client from it. So let's look at what the shape of our result will be. So we resolve the fields here. I'm guessing in storage we are using writing the encoded fields. Right. Yeah, we're doing an encode here. We'll need an ID to correlate it. We'll need the encoded fields, which we can just type as a none. Because we'll need to decode them on the host.
Right.
Meta. Yeah, I guess we can grab some meta here too. They were to start there. We'll work out what I'm missing. So we'll be sending these, and then we'll get back a stream. And everything's kind of like partitioned out at the config path. So if we update the config, we'll create a new result stream for that.
Makes sense. Yep.
Okay, so that's the schema. So on the server side, which is, in this case, the worker. We need to implement the interface that we just created. So in here we'll need RPC server. And then we can do our handlers here. So we go content work schema, RPCs, and it was 2-layer. And this 2-layer expects us to return an object for each method. And the other one was results. I'm getting autocomplete here.
Is 2-layer just an
Awesome.
effect or is it a function?
Property results is missing. Yeah. So here we would return a stream.
And is 2-layer, it's just an effect or is it a method that takes in like, or that has like handlers or something?
2-layer returns a layer from an effectual constructor.
Okay.
So we can see here our payloads. And then we just need to implement the handlers here. And then we can go RPC server dot layer. It wants to do that. We have a layer needs our handlers. We can provide those. What do we got left? We now have a layer that just needs the protocol. In an RPC, the protocol is kind of like responsible for the actual transport. So it could be HTTP, TCP sockets, or in this case, we want workers. So we go layer protocol, and we want worker runner. So now it just needs the platform implementation for workers. So in this case, we're going to use Node. And now we have our layer of Never, which we can then launch.
Cool. I like it.
Node runtime. But before here, we'll just log out to see if we're working. And then in document builder, we need to switch to using the RPC client. There we go, import RPC client from, there we go. And here we go, RPC client, make, and we need to pass in our schema, content, work schema. Different RPCs. I'll just comment that out for now and then just see what the dependencies are. Content worker pull dot default. Yeah, so we now have a layer that's looking for the RPC client protocol. Let's rename this. Oh, that's fine. So if we look in RPC client, we have some layers of the protocols, and we want the worker one. And here you can see the pool size like we did before.
Cool.
And we're missing time to list.
And on the server side, the reason you launched it with the node worker runner launch instead of like node runtime or layer.launch, I'm assuming there's some other stuff going on behind the scenes there.
Yeah, so like by default, layer.launch never closes or goes forever. But with workers, you want to shut down the worker when the client is finished or shut down too.
Right.
So the node worker launch API like listens to a special latch. So if the client sends a termination signal, it'll also shut down the worker properly.
Cool. All right. Very cool.
So now we just need to provide to this the actual worker. Well, we need to tell it how to launch the worker. Import layer from effect.
Might just want to also, while we're up in the imports, fix the import of the node worker.
Yeah. Yeah, so we need it. No, we should be never. Yeah.
The namespace import, yeah. So what is the alternate layer that you put in there, the layer platform? What does that provide? Multiple things, I'm assuming?
To provide like the platform implementation for spawning or setting up the communication for a worker. And then a spawner is basically this function here is the spawner function, which tells it how to actually create the specific worker we're launching.
Very cool.
So we go back up here. We now have our methods.
That's cool. Very cool.
Document name. document IDs, config path, content. Now, everything went well.
If it compiles, it works, Tim, right?
That's the idea. Cool. So our worker's getting our updated message.
Nice. Very cool.
So now we need to actually make it work. I guess to do this, we kind of need to collect all the IDs, or we just need to partition them or split them up evenly, essentially. So maybe if we set a constant somewhere. Says
Probably something we'd eventually pass in through the Contentlayer config, right? Not the file, not the file.
I have the worker size. Yeah, we could do that.
Like the CLI, basically. But we don't have to do that right now.
So we just need to decide how to split the worker. So here, we're grabbing all our events. We kind of just need to send the added events. I guess we could do like some kind of group aggregation. Or we could send the IDs one at a time. And just have some kind of incrementing counter that decides which worker to send it to. Probably a good start. And then we can optimize it later. So if in here we just go document ID. And then we have a counter. So we need to do the result stream later. So here actually the pool will handle that for us. We just need to send messages.
Yeah, the pool will evenly distribute.
Yeah. Okay, so we just need to offload this work. Actually, we need to kind of like rehydrate the source output first, because we're replacing the source stream. at the source. We also need to refill or make sure like the content APIs continue to work, so the plugins can consume the content. It does mean the sources need to be aware of how to rehydrate output from an ID and potentially the meta as well. So in Mac, if we also take hydrate ID string yeah. And this will be an effect that gives us back an output. And then we need to define a shape for like the encoded message that will come from the host. So we'll send the ID as a string. The meta is unknown. And I guess that should be enough. Yeah, it should be enough to generate the output. And then this worker stream will be a stream of worker event. And then here we'll need to go stream.map effect. And then we'll need to use that schema to decode the meta. Decode meta. Flat cap. Now we have the hydrated meta, we can build the output. Now what do we have? Passages, notice. And now we have our stream of output again.
Nice.
Then I guess we can just cast the times. I guess we can allow the same errors in here. Alright, and we need to turn those back into added events. Stream.map output event. Okay. And now we'll have some type errors we need to fix. Mm. Depth effect doesn't need the hydrate.
Are we using map effect anywhere? I don't actually think we're using it anymore. Anywhere.
I don't know. That's fine to keep it there. We need a different constructor here. We need one that is for making like the raw. We're doing like the raw prototype. And then one that does the hydrate. Maybe that cool make and then make with hydrate. And then file system would do a make. A make with hydrate.
I think you just need the hydrate key for the options.
Yeah. I guess we're gonna see is this load meta. Load meta. Meta dot plus. Can you re-extract this? It's using so we just need to lift the file system dependency simple.
Or we could
If we just go file system fill.
but sources aren't effectful, right? So like, but the the method. I'll just let you do what you're doing.
And then in here we'll need to go okay, I think that'll work. We have a way of turning the raw worker messages back into output objects. So we just need to update our worker schema to match the shape of the object. So when we process something, we need to send them in a name and ID. Yeah, it's fine. What do you call it? Process document.
Process
And
document.
then we can remove the namespace for all these guys. Okay. I guess we'll just replace all of this with worker dot process document. Content path, content path. ID, output, ID, meta. What do we got
So
now?
this is
Meta is a
this is the host sending all the data to the worker to then tell it to process the document. And then on the worker side, we'll actually do the work.
You need a document then. And then at some point we'll need to listen to the results. And then we'll need to think about error messages again, probably.
Luckily, it's on our handy dandy to-do list.
And I guess we'll need some way of signaling to the worker that we're finished as well. So for the case of like a single run,
Yeah, we could probably have like a shutdown message, or does the RPC worker implementation have some sort of like shutdown thingy implemented already?
we don't want to shut it down, but we just want to tell that the input they've finished, so the result stream has an endpoint.
Got it.
So here we could just say end of file, end of BOF. Yeah, sure, that's fine. So for a case where we are not in watch mode, we do just send that. Okay, so I think we need to rewire this a bit now. Let me grab our results. I guess if we just add the decoding while we're at it. Righty, minute and coded fields. I'm going to turn that back into. Actually, do we need that? Because if the worker does all the writing as well.
Are you planning on having the worker do all the writing as well, like the document storage and everything?
I mean, may as well.
True.
Um, so that means if process document represents the entire lifetime of that thing being processed, we can do like the bookkeeping for the process counting here. All right, what are we doing here? Decoding fields. So that will happen in the worker now. That will happen in the host for creating the document count. So process document will replace all of that. We still want to implement the document count. Maybe if we just add the content layer error to the RPC. Is it a schema? Yeah. Content worker schema. If we get rid of this guy, and then error content layer error. So if any of the processing fails, then the error will still come back to us. Okay. So we just need to look at moving this to the worker now.
Cool.
All right. Here's our worker. We don't need results anymore. And I guess we don't need the end signal anymore because it will just happen naturally now as part of the document order. It's not the worker's concern anymore to track lifetimes.
Right.
It just processes documents. So if this was not in watch mode, it would. We're doing this with concurrency unbounded anyway, so that's fine. It will just naturally shut down the worker as part of the lifetime of the host. So resolve computed fields will now need to move to the worker. We can refactor this later. And we just need to bring the imports along too. Get rid of the duplicates. We don't need stream anymore. Where's this document? Okay. So we've got a config path here. We need to turn that into a config instance. So I guess we can just copy what config builder is doing. Then we export this. Maybe rename it or read it.
Give me 1 second. I'm gonna step away. I'll be back in a few minutes.
Okay. When is this return an option? So I guess that's not quite what we need. We add a new API called from path. And it just needs to do this last bit here. It'll need file system input. Yep. Output entry point, what's that? File dot entry point. Content is the JavaScript we are evaluating. Entry point is something. I'm not sure why it can't be the same thing. This one. Art file dot path.
Sorry about that, Tim.
No worries.
How is it going?
Not too bad. I'm just trying to work out what the config building API will look like. So there's like two things happening. There's like this entry point and then the actual file or the compiled version of it.
Right.
And we are passing the entry point to create require. But maybe we can just default it to that. We don't need path. And then this will replace the bottom half of this, our original building function. Copy paste that here.
Is there a reason we need to default it? It's because we don't have the entry point on the other place, or
We're returning an optional config. Yeah, we're not tracking the entry point in the config itself right now. So that isn't a config option. Config object when we return in. I guess at this point though, we've kind of already verified that in the host, so we could probably
or diet there.
yeah, we'll diet in the worker. Okay. So the first thing we need to do is get our config. I guess we only kind of want to read it once per worker. So I think for that we could use, we can cache it. Maybe with an RC map. Lookup will be we'll take the path. And we'll call our config thing that we just made. Builder. Actually, we probably don't need this. It will be quite simple. It'll be config builder dot from path, and then effect of certain. So we now have an RC map that from the path will give us back a config object. Then we can just make these configs disappear after a minute. RC map.get configs. naming things.
Naming things. You could just destructure it. That's when I don't know what to name something, I just destructure it.
Okay, so we have our config. Let's go. And then we have a document name. I feel like we probably should rename that. That's fine. So from this config, we need to get. What do we need to get? What do we want here? Documents. We need to get the matching document by name. Fine. Then we need to do what we were doing before in the document builder. So we need to decode fields. Oh no, well first we need to put it through our source plugins. So I guess it'll just be a single element stream. We do need stream here. It does seem quite wasteful. Maybe per config we have like a running instance of the source pipeline.
I feel like maybe we just get it working first with the single element stream and then we can cache it after the fact. Basically, just to make sure everything's wired up correctly, because then we can optimize.
Yeah, let's have that. Stream. To succeed with a worker event. Yeah, we'll need the meta too. So we have our Lux surrogate replacement stream. Now we need to run the source. So the document.source. Yeah, I guess we just need to get the first result that comes back. So we can stream.run the edit. And then effects.provide. worker event stream.
Is the worker event stream a layer or is it a
Service.
Is it a? Yeah, I was gonna say.
Source.
And this would probably.
Where my body is type.
And would this be another situation where we could just flatten and die?
Yeah, I guess we could just flatten it all down.
For now, we can always, if we feel like we need it, we can always put like some specific error in there.
Oh, we do need to map the source errors to. Oh, we need to send the errors back at some point. So the error messages are nice in the host.
Right.
Oh. What was that? It's an event. So that event should be an added event. Visual method description. How many fields?
So many fields.
Description. There we go. Moving on. So now we have the output. We then need to decode the fields and write it to storage.
Probably want us also be able to send the those like build error thingies back, because I think we did something specific in those for the error message.
From memory, we embedded the information somewhere.
Yeah.
We created a build error type.
Yeah, I just don't
Oh, yeah,
remember.
build error.
I think we need to make it a schema, and then we can
Where
add
is
it
build
to our
error?
art.
Build error is in our error module. It's currently using data, so we need to switch the schema. So I guess we just pass the result of that into here, make that a schema.string.
Let's see.
And then this would be this passing. I guess if we just add a nice constructor. or from pass error. Options. Pass error, and then this is where we'll do
It's parse
the
result.
formatting stuff. Pass result, yeah. Pass result dot pass in
I think it's tree formatter to format.
Percent. And then we can just spread in the options.
The old double dot.
Catch and log. Yeah, it's fine. Okay, and then now worker schema. If we add error, Contentlayer error, or old error. And we go back to our worker. And we need access storage in here. Storage. Bad argument is assignable. Where is the bad argument coming from?
The very naughty argument.
Bad argument. Yeah. If we're a pass error, we need to address that. Okay. So we just need to reval the pass error here.
Probably another thing where we can just do. Can we
we
just
do
map
another-
it to the layer? And then I feel like for the platform error, we should just die with it.
Yeah.
Actually, wait, is there a catch and something on build error? But I think it takes a. Never mind.
Okay.
Never mind.
If build error dot is the pass error. Is there a predicate for that? Surely. It is pass error. Yeah.
Well, for a second, I thought the only one we had was in the cron module. I was about to give Sebastian a lot of credit.
Oh, I don't have access to the document down here. Oh, we have document. Look, where's my first one we need? We need ID and name. We just need to pass out those on here. And then we can get rid of that. And do that one. And now for this guy.
Maybe
I like if
I
we
thought
get
for
to that
most of
point,
the,
everything that's a defect.
I thought that we had we were dying with platform errors in the inside document storage. Maybe we just forgot to do it for right, but I was pretty sure for other methods we were dying with when we had a platform error.
Oh, yeah. Oh, if I ignore that. So that should, here we go.
Still something in there.
So right IDs. It's fine now, but this one. Main directory.
And then at the bottom.
Okay.
Now we should be able to remove the die from, yeah. Cool.
Alright, so our worker should be working.
I was waiting for you to make the joke, but I'm really happy you delivered.
Gotta make it work.
Right. Let's see if it works.
Alright, so if we just clean that document order now, we've ported that over.
Pretty substantial amount of work just to port over 20 lines of code, but hopefully, especially as the number of documents grow, hopefully this yield a significant performance benefit.
Yeah, I guess you have a serialization boundary to cross, and you also have to think about how to distribute the work. But I think the tool should take care of that. Could maybe tweak the settings as well. Workers, what are the options? We can set the concurrency per worker. So we could say something like 10 documents per worker at any one time.
Yeah, I think this is good. I also think that at some point in the future we'll want to give, like I said, the user the ability to turn this off.
Yeah, we can figure that out later.
Yeah.
Let's just let's log in.
While we're here, we also may just want to jot a few things down on the to-do list.
Yeah.
One of which being the optimization you wanted to make for the single element stream. We could look at that at some point in the future. So like reworking the single element stream in the workers. Like worker optimizations or something like this, but and then the other thing we can just drop in here for the future is the configurable like worker thing. So being able to turn workers on and off. Because like if a user's only processing 10 documents, it's possible, I guess, depending on the size of the document, that workers might slow things down more than just doing everything on the main process or main thread. Yeah, like introducing like a proper content layer configuration service.
I feel like we already have a config tag, don't we?
We
I
have
don't know,
a
sorry.
we have a watch mode tag,
Right.
but that could be rolled into like a proper configuration.
Alright, so in here, we just need to provide a couple of things. Document storage. What else we got? Source set provided.
That's I think the platform stuff. So the node context.
Nice. Again. Let's see. Yeah, we get
No.
our config path is not being set in config builder. Config. Right. Of course. So the config thing is actually just the user provided config. So maybe we just need to provide another type in here called build config or something that adds the metadata.
Yeah, probably not a bad idea.
And we can add the H3 point thing there already.
Interface. New TypeScript feature.
Read only config. Well, read only entry. Build config. And then the config builder will now return a stream of that somewhere. Option not bit. Build config. Okay. feel like that's going to break something. We already use the content config center document builder. Config.
Could we just put the documents on the build config instead of having the config nested twice? Because the config itself only has the documents on it, right? Like,
And it has a source. Oh no, the document has a source in it.
yeah, I think that config only has documents on it. We could just like flatten that out in the build config to avoid having to add.
Will we add more in the future? I don't know. We can destructure it. Documents. Alright, so we update the schema here. With the complete triplet. Just pass on. Good. So we broke our working.
It's no longer working.
Is it? Oh yeah.
We can probably pass the entry point now to. Oh no, I think you didn't end up passing that to the worker, right?
Yeah. Just because I'll need to update the cache key. I didn't really want to do that yet.
We can add it to our to-do list. Hmm.
That will be the config thing. Find.
We just have to resolve it. The path.
Config builder. What were we doing for? Path resolve. So where is it expecting it?
It was in the from path constructor that you were just looking at. The I think we were missing it somewhere. If you go back there. There where we dropped the entry point in. We're not path resolving it. So because the entry point's being defaulted to contentlayer.config.ts, I think it might be just better to take the time to update the cache key and do this the right way.
Entry point. That was the workout. if we go back to the schema, schema.class config path. Content worker schema config path. Entry point. And then in document builder, we need to use that. So new config path. Path. A path entry point. Entry point. And then in the worker, we can use that as the cache key here. Here, evaluating config. The source looks okay. I'm guessing it's just a working directory. For all that requires it here.
Wonder
I
if there's a way we
guess-
can set the working directory.
Course.
I wonder if there's a way we can set the working directory when we run the thingy.
Let's see if we can get the root cause. Cannot use import emitter outside of the module. Right.
Oh, it's because we're loading the VM. The VM running context is using CJS. But that shouldn't be running as key.
I think that's happening from inside the worker. So we shouldn't be loading the document builder anywhere though. Content worker.
Does like the document or any of those other files like reference the document builder?
I can. It's not. It's not tree shaking. Something. Uh. The only difference is this is happening inside of a worker now. So I guess somehow inside of a worker, it switches module format.
Um,
Anyway, if I edit Contentlayer config and go yeah, it's using the barrel import, which will be loading the document builder. I wonder if we can just try catch that as a link for now. Better. Reset. TS with. Sure. Let's see what you got, Copilot. I probably need to build. Yeah, I need to build.
yeah, I think there's something to do with like you said, it's loading. This is what I've found so far, but it's not super useful yet.
And then I need this one. I guess we should just check if we're getting a different error now first. So that error was being raised in the config builder. Yeah, console log course. Uh,
We could try passing exec argv options to the worker. How are you currently loading the worker?
yeah. So this is what syntax here. We kind of need to do some detection here anyway to work out if we're running in TSX or a bundle. Detect TSX. It's quick and dirty, but probably might still be triggered. Or
Yeah, I feel like it's the import meta URL that we're like even accessing it is causing the problem.
it's annoying that we can't just use the old dir name. I guess we can try.
You could also just do a check whether or not we're on the main thread. To see if that works for avoiding the import meta URL. Worker threads package exposes a check.
It will still include the source in the file. Let's try that. I feel like it's gonna break some rules. Now our worker isn't spawning. Not even hitting that point now. Maybe we can set this for our to do and update the imports for now.
Yeah.
Yes. It's weird that we were getting these issues before. Because we were still building CommonJS previously.
Yeah.
Worker reads. Yes, Might be something related to the TSX wrapper thing.
Could we try using oh, actually no, we can't. I don't think we can pass custom flags. Maybe we could try passing the like experimental strip types or something like that. Instead of using TSX to run the worker. No idea if that'll work. Like instead of passing that, like literally pass the file name directly, and then in the exec argv.
We need to make sure it's relative to this file.
And then in the
Get rid of
options,
email.
there should be an exec argv. And then pass. Oh, God, I forget what it's called, like the strip types thing.
It's experimental. Oops. What node version are we on here? 20.
Might have to upgrade. You can just do a Nix. You can, if you do a Nix Flake update, it probably will have the latest node. Let's check.
We'll go for time. We need to finish up.
Yeah, I think it's time to finish up. We can do this last last try, and then we can put this on our to-do list for next time. Figure this out.
We still need to get past Nix first.
Let's need to get past the Nix. The ultimate raid boss. Downloading Nix packages. This is thrilling.
Exciting. Just seeing if there's any other tips than this.
I mean,
get it working.
I feel like, there's definitely a way to get it working, and I was seeing a lot of references to like Vite in my Google searching.
Yeah.
So we actually have
Number 2214.
should be good enough.
Mm.
Maybe that eval was needed. I don't know.
The only reason that was needed is because I was running code instead of passing a path.
Well,
Maybe there's an error happening in the workable. Anyway,
add it to the to-do list, and we'll do it next time. Although, just so everybody knows, we're probably not going to be streaming next week because we're all going to be traveling for Effect Days. So we'll probably miss next week and potentially the week after, depending on how travel and everything plays out. But we'll try to keep going after that.
yeah, we'll commit that. Say it. Worker. Content. Worker.
The actual raid boss typing get a git commit message.
Which, yeah.
All right, everybody. Cheers. I hope
See
you
ya.
guys enjoyed the stream. We'll see you next time.